Welcome to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. Are you trying to master the game of life without success? There are secrets and strategies to living your best life. We'll share some of them with you on today's show. Take advantage of this series to become an expert at relationships. All relationships. It's time to live the life that you deserve to live. Now, here's your host, Sandra Reish.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish, a show about living your very best life. And, you know, I'm always looking for topics on how do you live your best life. And, you know, one of the things I think is most important and the bottom line is to own your stuff. But we all say that. What does it mean? Own your stuff. Take responsibility for your life. Don't be a victim. We hear this all the time. So I don't want to just say own your stuff. I wanted to do a show where I can teach you how to own your stuff and what are the things you can do in your brain to change, you know, the things that feel like, well, it's just my personality, so on and so forth. And how do you get away from disempowerment and move into really empowerment and really change your life? And today might be the day you do change your life. So I had to invite someone really brilliant and someone who has literally changed her life. I've watched her do it. She is a top psychologist, happens to work at the Montreal Centre for Anxiety and Depression, lucky me, a dear friend, and a woman who has definitely applied own your stuff to her own life in many aspects. If we're lucky, she'll share with us a little bit how that applied in her own life. But I definitely want to pick her brain about how people can start today to change their life. So first of all, welcome back to Straight Talk, Anna Maria Tosco.
Hey, Sandra. Super happy to be here again. Always fun.
And I forgot to say that you are the sassy psychologist.
Yes.
And for those of you who don't know what that is, what is that?
www.sassypsychologist.com. It's a blog that I started because I felt with everything that I've learned, Sandra, with everything that I've learned from you as well, P.S., I needed to start something. I needed to just talk about stuff. I needed to be no holds barred, cut the crap, kind of psychological advice. So I wanted to do it in an online format where I can reach a lot of people, have some fun with the peoples. And so I did.
Okay, awesome. So I asked you to come on the show. We talked about the topic and we arrived at the idea. This was quite a few months ago, so it may not even be fresh in your mind, nor is it in mine. But I know we came up with the idea that we wanted to talk about owning it and changing your life and not being in the victim mentality. So when I throw that topic out to you, and if I hand the microphone over to you, what is it that you want people to know about owning it, owning their lives? What does that mean?
Yeah. One of the biggest things I think about when it's about owning your own stuff is I always think about something I like to call the common denominator principle. Oh. You know, where it's like if you're living a reality in which the same stuff, the same crap, it just happens to you over and over and over again. Same crappy job, same crappy relationships, same, crappy situation, let's say. You have to think about how you might be responsible. And not to say that you are, everything is your fault. No. Please don't make that mistake. What I mean by that is if you're experiencing the same stuff over and over and over again, you have to consider the part you might play with the way you're thinking, the way you're behaving, perhaps, the way you're reacting to things, perhaps. I like to call the common denominator principle. We might be that common denominator in all of these situations. If you're always having unsuccessful relationships, not everything is your fault.
Right.
But of course you have to consider.
Right. So I love that. I'm going to expand on it because I do, because if you wake up, some days this happens, so I'm not proud, but you wake up and everybody seems to be incompetent around you. Let's take that example. And that could happen to me. And I start feeling short fused and getting annoyed. But the common denominator, using your example, is me. And so then instead of thinking I've got incompetent people around me, I got to look at if I'm starting to live by unrelenting standards. And I may or may not have been raised that way. So I might be starting to apply them in my own life and then transferring them on to everybody else. If the common denominator is me, yes, there might be incompetency around me, but there might be also a part of me I know when I'm snippy, it's because I'm pushing myself too hard. So if I'm really getting snippy with someone, so that ability to see my part in it is not, people might think, well, that, she's a therapist, of course she's going to think like that. It's not so much involvement, it's a strategy. It actually gives me the option to change my reality because otherwise I'm a victim of incompetent people.
Right.
But if I can look at my parts, I can go, okay, maybe I need to like chill a little bit.
I love that you said that, because it's like,
Thank you.
It's like being a reactionary. Like if you're all constantly reacting to your environment around you all the time. So in other words, you're in relentless reaction mode. Like you react, and you see your reality, you react in this way. And if your tendency is to react in a stressful way or whatever, you really do have to call yourself out on that. You know, you have to be mindful of your own reactions.
So you have to be honest.
Yeah,
so maybe we could put on the table that the first thing about owning your life, I think this is a big one, is to be honest about your role in it. Because you've brought up the role. I've added in the honesty part. That you got to look at that you always have a role. You said you're not fully to blame. I'm not fully to blame if there's a situation, if a whole bunch of things happen. I'm not going to take that all on me. But I have a part. But to admit that, I have to be truthful about my part. That's not that easy for people. Why are we so afraid to admit the truth? Why is it so bad to find out that maybe my standards are very high? It's not such bad news.
Right.
Why are we afraid of that?
Right.
Anna Maria Tosco, psychologist extraordinaire. Why are people so afraid of the truth? What will it mean if we find out we have a flaw?
It's really funny you say that, because like in psychology, everybody has heard about the idea of defense mechanisms, right? Mm-hmm. And so we can kind of be a little bit, by the book, and perhaps it'll be a snore to go through all of the defense mechanisms. But what we need to know is that they exist, and they exist, from a psychological perspective, to protect our ego. So when we are threatened in any way, shape, or form, what happens is we might have a certain reaction or have a certain defense where we push away all that bad stuff, because, oh, God forbid, if I have very stressful reactions, or if I'm too snippy, or if I'm you have to find a way to acknowledge your defense mechanisms.
Okay.
There's a whole list of them. Everybody has them, and they're so healthy and they're fine.
Can you give us an example?
Of course.
Please.
Listen, one of the healthiest defense mechanisms to have is humor.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really healthy adult defense mechanism. It's amazing, and that's a great defense mechanism to have. But of course, then you have the more immature defense mechanisms like denial.
Oh, yes. And why is denial like a problem, maybe?
Well, that's it. So, I mean, if something happens in your life and you don't want to come to terms with it, you can't really, you really don't want to face the truth. Of course, it's not abnormal. It's very normal, but it's to your advantage to acknowledge that there is denial going on, to acknowledge that there is a defense mechanism working at play.
Okay, so these defense mechanisms, they're designed to protect us.
Yes.
But I think what you're saying is they don't really protect us. Or I think maybe I'm saying that.
Yeah, no, I don't know that. I think that they do. I think actually one of my previous supervisors once told me that if defense mechanism is intact, keep it intact. It's okay. That means you're not ready to open the door. But of course, when we're expanding and we're growing, and when I'm talking to my clients, I would love for them to be at the stage where they're willing to look at their defenses. I think it's super healthy to have them, and if they're intact for a reason. Maybe I'm not ready to deal with the death of my parents. Maybe I'm not ready to deal with that breakup. That's okay.
Okay, but hold on. Let's go back to our example, because if I have the defense mechanism of denial, and by the way, if you want to join the conversation, because we get such nice feedback on Straight Talk, and thank you all so much for your comments and your questions. I know very rarely do people call in, but we do get a lot of emails, and we really appreciate it, so keep them coming. So if you do want to join the conversation, first of all, let me say the phone number is 1-866-472-5792. That's 1-866-472-5792. If you prefer to not call in, you want to email us, info@helpforanxietydepression.com, info@helpforanxietydepression.com. So, so if I have a defense mechanism of denial, I'm struggling a little bit with the fact that, yes, it's good to have a defense mechanism, but we have put on the table that truth is going to set me free. Mm-hmm. Denial and truth are not a good marriage. So what do I do?
If you're not ready for truth, what I
your psyche can't handle it, is what you're saying.
If it's too fragile at the moment, denial away.
But I can't change my life.
No, definitely not. You have to be ready. You have to be ready to be at that step to change it. You have to be ready to not be in denial, be ready to face your defense mechanisms. That's what I think. Anyway.
Well, no, I really like what you're saying, and it really shows me again what a great psychologist you are, because I think that you're showing something about therapy, which is that you hold the space of where the person is at that time. So I was a little bit struggling when you were saying defense mechanisms are good because when we're adults, they can be sometimes very bad for us. But I get what you're saying now, which is that the defense mechanism, if that's where you're at and that's what your brain can handle or your psyche can handle, you're the kind of psychologist, and that's so important, that you can work with the person that's where they are at that time. And let's see if we can get them to a stronger place where they can get to the truth. So we've ended up on a little bit of a tangent, but it's an important tangent, which is because I always tell people you got to tell yourself the truth. But you've brought to the show another aspect, which is if you can handle the truth. Okay? That's what you just brought. Because it's true. If you can't handle the truth about yourself, if I find out I have high standards, but that will destroy me and put me into a psychotic episode.
Right.
It's not helpful.
I love that you're saying this because, right, creating your reality or facing your stuff, is the topic today. But yes, I guess what I always like to say, when you're ready to make those big changes, of course you have to be psychologically well. You have to be, your well-being has to be quite high. I think that you have to be well in order to do the really hard work. So when you really want to create your reality, I think you have to be at a place in your mind and in your mindset where you're ready to make those big changes, because they're hard, right?
Right, they are really hard. And, if we're assuming that for people listening that some people are ready to make those changes, how would you advise them to start?
All right. So where do you start? I always say that patterns don't lie. And actually, it's funny. I think my partner and I, we always talk about this. He's so lucky to have a therapist girlfriend, eh? We talk about so
lucky. It depends how you look at it. Lucky or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A little bit of sarcasm there for
sure. Oh, were you being sarcastic?
Yeah.
Oh,
sometimes it's like,
but he is very lucky.
Definitely. We have a good relationship there because he calls me out on my patterns too. Now that we had a conversation about patterns and how important they are, we're talking about each other's patterns because patterns are so important and they don't lie. So I encourage people to talk to their loved ones, to look within, first of all, try to figure out what your patterns are. If you're not sure, call up your mom, call up your husband, call up your cousin, whatever. Talk about your patterns. I know it's for some people it's a nightmare conversation. Hey, what do you think? Do I do this often? Is this one of my patterns? I know it's hard for some people, but gosh, I love that.
Have you ever done that?
Yes.
And Maria Tosca, that's very courageous.
Oh, yes.
So that's psychological courage.
I love that. Yes.
You've asked people to point out your patterns.
My fiance and I talk about it all the time.
Okay, what have you asked?
Okay. Oh, Sandra, just put the microphone closer to me because
yes,
this is juicy stuff. I gotta think though. Wait, I don't know the patterns that I have. Okay, here's a good one. So it's somewhat of a superficial one, so it's not so juicy, but I promise you if I have a juicy one, I'll tell you. But my analness with time, right? Okay. I always have to be on time.
Yeah, I knew you'd be on time for the show.
Right.
They were asking where you are. I was like, I'm not even slightly worried.
I know.
As a matter of fact, I started telling them, we better get ready because she's going to be early. Okay, I know.
I listen. I know where that comes from too. It comes from my dad, etc. But my fiance and I talk about it all the time because I can get a little bit neurotic with time. So when time's a ticking and people are, let's say I'm having a dinner party or something, or a Thanksgiving dinner or whatever, because I just had one. It's like I start to get really stressed and really nervous when time is coming, and that doesn't make for a very comfortable, interaction with me. Sorry, my fiance's like, oh gosh, here she goes. So we bring it up, like, oh, I've noticed that you do this often. So that gives me permission to be like, okay, what happens when people come over?
Second step is curiosity.
Yeah.
I want to point that out. Second step is curiosity. So you asked about your patterns, and now you asked yourself, what is this all about? So go ahead.
So I get stressed. I'm thinking, okay, so I'm worried that people are going to judge me. I'm worried that people are going to judge my house and the cleanliness and all of that stuff. So I then have to reach within and be like, okay, if your house was a mess, does it matter? Will people still love you? Will people still come over? And so it's really kind of therapizing myself, but that's what you have to do. You have to know your patterns. And so what about you, Sandra Reish?
Yeah. Well, okay.
I'd love to hear some of your dysfunctional patterns. Well, we all have them.
I already told you one of them, like when I feel like everyone's incompetent, it's because I ride my car very hard. So I demand a lot of myself. And so when I start seeing that I'm getting snippy with other people, it's because I'm pushing myself too hard. So it's just coming out on other people. So I know because when people make mistakes around me and I'm cool with it, There's been a few, maybe even today. Okay, if I'm cool with it, it means I'm not driving my car so hard. So the curiosity is, why am I so frustrated when people are maybe not incompetent, but lazy or don't take responsibility? It usually means I'm not giving myself a break. And that's because I was raised that way. But that's not a healthy way of being. And as a matter of fact, we're going to take a break in a moment, but this is something for people to think about on the break, because there's many people with this particular issue, and yours too, because they're both rooted in perfectionism. And I just want to put it out there. I want to throw in some science, because I love science, is that perfectionism and high standards with the time, or with people remembering to do things they're supposed to do, mine and your issue, is not linked with success. So there's a little bit of a game going on, and the research shows, I'm going to take us right to the break and have people really take your time on the break and take this in. The research shows that lowering your standards about your dinner party or about getting things done actually will make you more successful psychologically, financially, in every which way. What do you think?
Juicy.
Okay. I'm not even going to let you go further than juicy, because we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Straight Talk with Sandra Reish.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Spa Munari is a full-service wellness day spa located at the heart of West Island, Quebec. Submerge yourself in beauty with one of our many treatments, specially catered to your needs. We offer facials, manicures, pedicures, hair removal, massages, body treatments, and so much more. Enjoy our ultimate relaxation experience with our spa packages. We offer a men's menu as well. Call us today to book your next appointment at 514-695-5040 or visit us on the web at spamunari.com. That's 514-695-5040 or spamunari.com.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reish, on her famous couple retreats, and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reish. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
A fresh look at today's health. Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
So we're back with such a great guest and someone I love so dearly, and she was just saying she loves the energy, and I love talking with her because she's so brilliant and it's just something magical happens. Before we get back into it, though, I do want to take time to thank our sponsor, Spa Munari, and talk about owning your stuff. I always like to tie it into the topic, but owning your stuff helps. It's a lot easier to own your stuff if you take some time for yourself. And Spa Munari, who's here in Montreal, if you call them at 514-695-5040 and you mention Straight Talk with Sandra Reish, you'll get 15% off on any of their treatments. Now, again, this leads me back to type A personalities and perfectionists, is that, going to a spa requires taking time for yourself, and taking time for yourself is not something that type A's and perfectionists do. They drive their cars very hard. So with your dinner party and when you feel like things have to be on time, you are driving yourself hard. And if I feel that things have to go, I have to get a certain amount of things done every day, I'm driving myself hard. I might need to call Spa Munari, maybe you too. And we need to get over there.
It's funny that you say it because, I'm thinking about if you're the type of person, talk about patterns, I never have time to go to the spa. Who has time to go to the spa? Whatever. I have to do this. I have errands. I have kids. I have whatever. Homework help. I have a course that I'm taking.
Yeah.
If that could be your pattern. So call the spa, get your hair done, do whatever.
695-5040. But you know what? It's so interesting that you say that, because that person who says, I don't have time, I have kids. Okay, I want to really play this out, because it sounds a little bit like this, like, must be nice for you that you get to go to the spa. This is the subtext. I, in brackets, am very important, and I don't have time for that because, in brackets, I'm very important. In brackets, I'm very important. I have 2 kids, I have 4 companies, I have this, I have that. Must be nice for you. In other words, I'm a self-sacrificer. You, however, are self-indulgent and selfish. So we should talk about that, dance, because people ask me a lot at the talks that I do, what are you supposed to say to somebody when they say, it must be nice that you get to go on all these vacations? And I say, you say, yes, it's lovely. That's what your answer needs to be. I can tell you're frothing at the mouth.
I love it. No, it's true. I mean, it's so funny because I'm having an issue now with some friends and family members about self-sacrifice, and that's a pattern that I hope people really acknowledge, because listen, I come from Catholicism. My background is Italian, and I have, especially the women, a lot of patterns of self-sacrifice. I'm the martyr. I have to do everything for my kids. I have to all the time. And it's so hard when it's been ingrained for years and years and years and years.
Right.
And I got to tell you, it's heartbreaking because I don't think a lot of my family members have the desire or are ready, like we were talking about before, whether or not you're ready, but that pattern has to be killed.
Well, okay, so we just hit on the martyr. So since we hit on that, I didn't know we were going to get there, but since we're there, is that the martyr personality, and again, it is very much streams down from cultures, religion, lots of factors, women, all sorts of stuff. The martyr has to be a self-sacrificer, and has to do ultimate self-sacrifice for a cause. So what's the cause? You have to establish what's the cause you're self-sacrificing for. If it's parenting, that's a good one that people like to do. But self-sacrifice to that extent is, and I do want to say this to therapists in the house, is the ultimate act of self-hatred.
Agreed. Love that.
I repeat.
Good.
Ultimate act of self-hatred. So if you're a mother who says, I'm sacrificing, and I know some of you are listening because I know you, I'm a mother, so I'm going to self-sacrifice for my kids. And I'm not saying you can never sacrifice for your kids, but ultimate self-sacrifice. And I see lots of mothers that are miserable. Yep. I even see young women who don't want to have kids because they see mothers that are miserable, which makes me sad, because having kids is great if you're not a self-sacrificer.
Exactly.
And if you are telling yourself that your self-sacrifice is benefiting your kids, I have to bust that in you. You are lying to yourself.
Please bust.
Because the number one thing a kid wants to see is what? Anna Maria, let's go.
Oh, are you going along with the number one thing the kids wants to see is mom, dad taking care of themselves, mom, dad staying healthy and happy. Happy
parents. I mean, think about it, okay? People show up in your office, they show up in my office. I think we have different offices. Maybe it's not the same answer, but I always hear from clients, they just wanted to see their parents happy. Yeah. So yes, my kids don't like when I go away. So yes, they pull me into self-sacrifice. Like, don't go away, you're ditching me. I'm glad this is coming up for the mothers listening.
Yeah.
So there's a part of me that goes, okay, I should cancel the trip and be at home with my child. But the truth is, if I started to do that, it's the beginning of the end of me living true to what's important to me. I'm not saying you can't make adjustments. And then I'm at home, but I'm miserable because my favorite line is, have you ever met a happy martyr? Have you ever met a happy martyr?
No, absolutely not.
No way. Never met a happy martyr.
No.
Okay, so self-sacrifice, no.
No.
Curious about patterns, yes.
Yes.
Perfectionism, no. Type A versus type B personalities. What have you got to say about that?
Oh, I think it's important to know. Again, you tell me if we're going off track here, but I'm like,
No,
type A, type B, that's delicious stuff right there too.
Yeah.
So
everything you talk about sounds like really like food.
Yeah,
You must
I'm
really
a
enjoy your
foodie.
food.
Oh,
And I was very upset with her today because you showed up with no food. No, I'm just kidding. Carry on.
Okay, so type A personality, in terms of knowing your patterns, please, acknowledge them. But now, so there's type A and there's type B.
Are you a type A or a type B?
I'm a wholly type A.
Me too.
Wholly type
so two
A.
type A's.
Yeah, exactly. So
let me defend us first.
Okay,
Type A's are the movers and shakers of the world.
Yes.
But there's a big but.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So of course, we're the movers and shakers, but it breeds anxiety, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so a ton of anxiety. We're the kind of get this done. Are you writing to-do lists? Are you like wanting to check everything off? Are you running 75,000 errands because it's efficient? You're type A, okay?
Yes.
So now, of course, the type A's, they have to be aware of their patterns and they have to be aware when they're running themselves into the ground. I want to move to type B because I'm so excited about it, but stay on type A if you want. Is there anything else you want to say about I
want you to move to a B. I thought you were saying you want to change into a type B personality because
I'm
to
trying.
tell you, I don't know that a type A really can become a type B, and I want people to know because I have a lot of type A mothers who try to make their type B children into type A's.
No.
You can't do that.
No.
You can't do that. People are who they are.
And so with regard to type B, again, I'm going to move away from the psychological definitions. I'm going to move towards more of the kind of the common definitions. So essentially, those people who are not needing to accomplish everything on their to-do lists. They're not immediately calling you back. They're not immediately emailing you back. Now, you have a type A and a type B together. They drive each other nuts.
And by the way, type A's and B's fall in love.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I'm in love with a type B.
Are you? So am I.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Oh, we have to talk about
Yes, of course.
Carry on. This is great.
But now, okay, so listen, the type A's, and we think we've spoken about it so far, like what we have to do to kind of crush our patterns. Now, the type B's are chill. Type B's are laid back, right? So now, while the type A's have things to work on, the type B's kind of have to meet us halfway, and that's how they work on their stuff,
That's right?
And they work on their patterns, because sometimes you're not emailing back, but maybe you should a little bit sooner. What do you think?
No, I completely agree, and I'm glad you're saying that because we're certainly not going to say the type A's are completely at fault here. I think that there's a dance going on between type A's and type B's. When they dance, that's what we're on right now. So one person is like, I just sent the email, 15 minutes has passed, why haven't you responded? So it's an anxious response. But I do want to submit to you, I think you're going to like this, is type B's in a way, if they're really not responding for a long time, that is also an anxious response.
Yes. Yeah. Ooh.
Because what the heck is going on?
Right. You know what?
That's avoidance.
Yeah.
Avoidance is anxious. Go on.
The type B's almost feel like it's better to not respond sooner.
Right.
Which is so foreign to me.
Right.
Oh, me too.
Like, wow, we should really fall in love and get married. We'd be so good together.
Yeah.
It's very foreign to me.
Yeah.
But they're reducing their anxiety by not responding. And they also say things like this. I've interviewed them a lot and half for my practice and half because I secretly would like to understand that they actually are not responding because they don't have they don't want to say things like, I'm working on it. It only counts if they've done the deed. So did you speak to Anna Maria Tosco? I'll write to someone, did you speak to Anna Maria Tosco? A type A will write back and say, no, not yet. A type B will not respond.
Until they've spoken
to Anna Maria Tosco.
Yeah.
Because it's a failure.
Yeah, it's a failure schema.
It took me a long time to understand this.
But I love it because now we're kind of, if you're a type B and you're listening and you kind of want to know what your patterns are, what maybe some of your dysfunctional patterns are, we might be,
there could be some failure schema there.
Failure schema.
Okay, so that's one of the. Now we ended up on a whole other realm, which is really good. Is that actually, the topic is own your stuff, but this is where you've brought in, and thank you so much for this, Anna Maria. You brought in relationships, and relationships help you to own your stuff. Which you see, if you want to find out your dysfunction, get into a relationship, and this is a perfect example because
one of Sandra Reich's famous lines. P.S.
And it still stands the test of time because we're fine when we're not in a relationship. I think I'm delightful.
All right.
Okay, then you get into a relationship and you find out like you're not so delightful. And apparently your style is annoying or your partner's style is annoying. But actually, this is where you turn your lemons into lemonade. And I think you're alluding to this, and thank you so much for that, is that the type A, and you brought this up, the type A needs to learn from the type B, and the type B needs to learn from the type A. So that's owning your hidden parts of yourself. It's owning a piece of yourself that's missing. Wouldn't it be nice to not always have to respond to an email? Wouldn't it be nice to not always have your house clean?
Of course.
Wouldn't it be nice to not always have unrelenting standards?
Yeah.
So we're secretly envious of the people we're annoyed with, I submit to you.
I'm thinking about something like my fiance, my partner taught me.
Tell us.
One of my favorite things, and I tell him this, and I wrote about one of this in one of the blog entries for sure, but he from right at the beginning, and he didn't even teach me with words, he taught me with his actions, and it had to do with text messages. And, as a type A, I like to get things out. I like to say what I need to say, and I like to, and when it comes to things like text messaging, he almost taught me, of course, respond, but, don't use multi-layered text messages, it's very simple text messages, and then you see each other face to face and you communicate better. I hope I'm not getting off track. And this is related to type A, type B a little bit, because he's so type B, he's chill, he's relaxed. He knows that when it comes to text messages, you write something, surface stuff when it comes to text messages. Then if you have to talk more, you talk in person. But for me, it was like, right now, rah, rah, text message. And it's so important to take the time to say what you need to say and to be relaxed. Like, don't react right away and get all uppity and get all, emotional about it right away. Sit back, take a little bit of time, type A's. Type A's need to take a little bit of time before reacting. Don't send that 3 a.m. email.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. But I think reactionary is very much on topic with what we're talking about, because we're talking about owning your stuff and owning your life. And I think that to be reactive, you cannot own it. You're really having an emotional response, which we love emotions, but I love the idea of a strategy to take a few minutes, think about what you're writing before you text back, or think about even your response to someone. Again, so far on the table, we have, being curious, looking at your patterns, what part belongs to me. Now, what if somebody starts to do this, they do the work and they start to empower themselves, they look at their patterns and they're starting to get into a better position in their life. Have you noticed that sometimes society or the people around them can sometimes sabotage them and disempower them?
Yeah, I like to always say to my clients, when you start to make changes, you're going to piss everybody else off.
Okay.
You're going to ruffle feathers around you because they almost preferred you, in the way you were before. I mean,
what's that all about?
It's crazy, eh?
Yeah. So can you help us understand? What's that all about?
So essentially, when you start to change your patterns, when you start to, let's say, establish boundaries, you establish boundaries, and then the people around you all of a sudden said, hey, why isn't she responding to me like she usually does? She's right there. She's always right there for me when I need her. And today, all of a sudden, she's taking a nap. Essentially, when you start to acknowledge your patterns, and if you're really starting to take care of yourself, you ruffle people's feathers. And it's not easy. That's one of the things I think that's really important. I tell my clients, when you start to change and when you start to create your own and to own your stuff and you start to respect yourself, you are going to ruffle people's feathers because the people around you are used to you not respecting yourself, so to speak. Does that answer your question? What do you think?
It really does. And I think that, people want to put you back to, status quo. And I also think that empowerment is moving out of the misery loves company circle. And I don't think people are cruel. I don't think that they're really doing it because in theory, why wouldn't people want you to reach for the stars? I don't think people are inherently cruel. I think it just makes them very nervous that they're not reaching for their stars. So I think that, a lot of Straight Talk is about empowering people. And I think for our listeners, it's important that as you're going on this journey, I think what Anna Maria is saying is so important, that people are not necessarily going to like it. You said it will piss them off. And I think it also makes them very afraid that they're not reaching for their stars. And I think that needs to be out there so that you can comfort yourself that this is okay. And people will adjust. It's homeostasis. It's like your body always returns back to homeostasis. I think people will adjust.
Right.
Because the fear is that people will abandon you.
Yeah.
And I don't think for the most part they do.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. You're making me think of something, Sandra. How do you feel about this? So, just an example. I remember years back learning how to play the guitar, and it was something new, and it was something exciting for me. And I played the guitar for a couple of my friends, and they just were like, meh, whatever. Not to say that I was looking for compliments, but I was kind of like, wow, I was insulted.
Yeah.
But I'm using this as a metaphor and an analogy because I realized that, hey, if I'm going to play the guitar, I'm going to know my audience. So when I'm trying to expand and I know that so-and-so is not going to support me in that, I'm not going to go there with you.
Right.
I'm going to go there with other people.
Yeah.
But I know that if this person is not supporting me in my growth, and my development, I may or may not leave them. I don't know. It depends on the situation.
But know thy audience.
Know thy audience. Yeah, I think that's a super important thing when you're doing this work, so you don't feel alone and you don't feel abandoned.
Yeah, and I think that's a great story, though, about the fact that people also, to be happy for you, they have to be happy with themselves. So knowing thy audience is that the only people who can really cheer you on are people who are cheering themselves on and reaching for their own stars.
Brilliant.
And so sometimes we try to get that validation from people who haven't reached their own stars. And I know you weren't waiting for it, but it's still hurtful when you're showing someone your guitar playing and they're like, meh. When you're reaching, that's a big thing for you. You were trying something else. So I think that's a great story.
I love that we stumbled upon this because now I'm flooded with client examples of, my clients trying to grow and trying to create their own reality and trying to change, and then going back to people like their parents, and their parents don't support them. Yeah.
That is a huge topic. Parents not supporting when you're making a change and what's going on there. So we're going to take a break.
Yeah.
We'll be right back on Straight Talk with Sandra Reish and talk about why parents or people don't support you and what that sabotage is about and how to make sure it doesn't stop you. We'll be right back.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reish. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
Spa Munari is a full-service wellness day spa located at the heart of West Island, Quebec. Submerge yourself in beauty with one of our many treatments, specially catered to your needs. We offer facials, manicures, pedicures, hair removal, massages, body treatments, and so much more. Enjoy our ultimate relaxation experience with our spa packages. We offer a men's menu as well. Call us today to book your next appointment at 514-695-5040 or visit us on the web at spamunari.com. That's 514-695-5040 or spamunari.com.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reish, on her famous couple retreats and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Your life, your health, your network. This is Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
Well, this is clearly turning into a very big topic, and one that I have a feeling will be transmuting into another upcoming topic, because when Anna Maria comes, there sure is a lot to say. She is just a fabulous psychologist, and a lot of her work and her specialty is in neuroplasticity and changing your brain and creating new neuronal pathways in the brain. And I think I definitely want to get to that during this segment. But first, we're going to talk about, God, I can't believe the time is running out, but so let's get to it. Talk about, it's sort of a weird statement that you said, even though I understood it, but parents would sabotage someone from being their best version of themselves?
Yeah, I don't think it's the fault of the parents necessarily. I think it's, again, psychological patterns, things that you've learned, your experience. I don't think that they're necessarily doing it on purpose. Sometimes some parents might be, but I'm actually talking about the times in which my clients are trying to change and trying to expand and trying to try something new. And they go back to their support system. And it's so lovely when they have a great support system and it's working and people are open-minded, but that doesn't always happen. So if you are somebody who's trying to create their own reality, trying to own their stuff, and you take that stuff that you learned, you went to a workshop, you went to your therapist, and you're taking it back to your parents, let's say, and unfortunately those people, in this case parents, are not being supportive, you have to acknowledge that. And I always tell my clients, if that's happening, please don't get discouraged, but we have to acknowledge the fact that they're not being supportive and they're not the audience. Know your audience, right?
Absolutely. Now, I would go one step further and tell me if you agree that if once I realize my parents aren't supportive, because I feel this really relates to a lot of my earlier years, like going back to school, I did not feel a lot of support. People were telling me, family members, friends, you're too old, you can't go back to school, you'll be the laughing stock. And at one point where I think it's important, it was important for me and perhaps for people listening, is that if I keep going back into that, and I'm not saying I broke up with them, but getting into a discussion with them, I think at some point we can't underestimate how much that poison will get under your skin, and you will start sabotaging yourself. So I think I call it being in a smoky room. My clients know that's like a terminology I use
That's
a lot.
totally a Sandraism. It's one of my favorites.
But I think, thank you, but I don't think you can keep going into a smoky room and not get lung cancer. So would you agree that at some point, if people aren't supportive to you, if you keep going back to them for advice or to tell them about your victories and they keep raining on your parade, that you now have some responsibility in sabotaging yourself?
Oh my gosh, if you keep going back?
Yes.
This is another Sandraism, putting your hand in the blender.
Put your hand in the blender, absolutely.
Putting your hand in the blender each and every time.
Yeah. The funny thing about that story that I'm sharing a little bit, and I don't know if I've mentioned on Straight Talk, and I'm not going to go into the whole story, but it really fits with this whole paradigm that we're talking about, because ironically, my father was the one who gave me the hardest time about going back to school. And what was life-changing for me is when I was finished my degree, he said to me, I wish I could have done what you did, which is where I learned more than I learned in my psychology degree from him at that moment, that when someone's trying to disempower you, it's because they envy you. But who would have thought?
Yeah.
He was mocking me. No disrespect to my father, many, many redeeming qualities, but he was mocking me about school when he secretly envied the fact that I had gone back and he wished he had. So I think that's not different from my father than all humans. I think it's a human nature quality. Is sometimes someone goes, like when women leave marriages or men leave marriages, a lot of time their friends are not supportive. They say, well, he's a good guy, why are you leaving him? I think it's the same dance. If you find your courage to leave, maybe I have to look at if my marriage is problematic. Does this make sense to you?
Oh my gosh, it's brilliant. Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what do we do to protect ourselves? We are not going to go back into the smoky room.
Yep.
Okay. What about the doubt in our mind? What about neuronal pathways? I think this is very much an Anna Maria area. What about those neuronal pathways? If I start saying, well, maybe it is crazy to go back to school at my age, and maybe I won't get a job, and maybe everything that they say is true. What do I do with my neuronal pathways, Miss Neuronal Girl?
So essentially, I going back to school and being courageous in your case, and with anybody today who's listening, who's trying to create a different reality or trying to own their stuff, it's super difficult. And so I really admire the step you took there, Sandra, because here's what you're working against. You're working against years and years of particular chemicals being released in your body.
Okay.
So if you are engaging in any kind of pattern, let's say you have a pattern of insecurity, a pattern of I can't do it. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to say there's a chemistry there. There's a chemistry that you've been indulging. There's certain neurotransmitters that have been released your whole life, certain neuropeptides, certain hormones. And so when you try to kind of move away from a certain reality or certain feelings or certain thoughts, you go through withdrawal because your body is used to how you were, how you've always been. And that's the beauty of what you're talking about, Sandra, and neuroplasticity, where it's like, listen, it might be hard to change your patterns because that's why a lot of people don't go back to therapy because they're like, whatever, it didn't work for me. I tried some stuff. And no, I mean, hate to be so hard on you, but you have to be relentless, man.
Relentless.
You have to be relentless
I like
in your
this as a strategy.
therapeutic.
Be relentless.
You have to be relentless in your therapeutic endeavors. Otherwise, you will not create your own reality. You will not own your stuff.
I feel like in a way when you say that, I feel like it gives so much light and clarity to the process I went through during those years. It was many, many years ago what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it was not an easy time. It was relentless to keep fighting that fight. So what you're saying is that when people do that, they have to be very, very committed to the process, and probably having a therapist to guide you through it would be helpful. I was in psychology school, so all my friends were therapists, kind of helped.
Right.
But having that kind of support system, but we shouldn't expect it to be easy to change those brain patterns, should we? Because I think people get discouraged. They just see you at the finish line and they think, well, like, why can't I do that? It's not that easy.
Let's not sugarcoat. Let's not sugarcoat it. So many people would want. How many times have we said, "Oh, I just wish I could take a pill," and for this to happen? It's not. That's not the reality of creating your own reality.
Okay.
You have to work at it.
You have to work hard. And, we're getting to the point that I want to make sure we get these short snappers in. What about victim mentality? Where does that play into this? Where does victim mentality come in terms of owning your life? Can you own your life if you're in victim mentality? And what is victim mentality, after all? Anna Maria Tosco, take us in.
Let's use some of the language, some of the quotes. It's not fair. This always happens to me. All the good ones are taken. I'll never have a job that I'm happy with. Nobody loves me. I don't have any friends. I don't have a
family that supports me.
Yeah. All of these. Now, listen, I want people to pay close attention to that kind of language, because even sometimes I lovingly call my clients out on that language, and some people have a really difficult time admitting that, oh, that's victim language. That's victim mentality. That's victim consciousness.
Let me play the client's role right here for you, put you to work. Okay, but it's true. My family doesn't support me, and all the good ones are taken, and I can't find a job. So that's victim language. Fair enough, honey, but it's the truth.
You know what? I mean, I think this is a Sandra thing. You have to know that you're the victim before you can be released from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Okay, so I acknowledge I'm a victim. What do I do next?
So the thing that
I'm making her work.
No, I know, but the thing, I have some of Sandra's training in my brain a little bit
sweet.
there.
I think this is all yours at this point.
The truth is, in order to get somebody out of victim consciousness, first of all, I'm a big fan of, if they're stuck there, I'm not pulling you out kicking and screaming. If you want to stay there, then
own it.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of own it.
Yeah.
I am a victim. I choose to be a victim, and I like being a victim and eating my brownies late at night and feeling sorry for myself.
Yeah. And listen, and we would talk about that.
I get that.
And we would talk about why that's beneficial for you. We would stay there. I would stay there with you, because I'm not going to drag you out kicking and screaming. That's way too much work for me.
That's why you're a good psychologist.
No way. But one of the things, when they're ready, is the concept of choice, right?
So the antidote to victimization is, what was that word again?
Choice.
Awesome. The antidote to victimization is choice. I want everybody to repeat it out loud wherever you are right now, because unless you're a child, there's always choice. So that means no matter how bad your circumstances are, and sometimes the choices are not great choices. Choice A is not great and choice B is not great, but that is still choice, and choice is empowerment. Even if it's not great choices, because people argue with that. They go, yeah, well, my choice is give up my child for adoption or go on welfare. I admit those are not good choices, but the mere fact that you have a choice takes you out of
victimization and into empowerment.
Ooh, this is a good topic.
I came to a conclusion once about choice. You know what else is a choice? And I realize it's a super hard thing to get clients working on, is self-esteem and body image. At a certain point, because that follows you. I mean, I don't know if you've had this experience, but I know I have, and this struggle with body image and self-esteem and looking in the mirror and trying to like what you see. I've realized that, victim mentality is relevant there, and that you have to choose it or lose it, man. You have to choose self-esteem. You have to choose, a positive body image.
I've never thought of it like that. That's really good, Anna Maria.
Because at a certain point, man, I'm like, this self-esteem thing is so hard to work on.
I know.
And it's really a choice. You have to decide to look in the mirror and find things that you like.
That is really good, because I'm really having an epiphany with that, because it means that every time you look in the mirror and put yourself down, you are choosing to feel bad about yourself.
How else? I mean, I work with
why would we do that to ourselves?
I wonder. Right?
What are we doing? That's a whole show.
That's for sure.
Women, body
Loathing,
image.
yeah.
Oh, I think you've hit something very big there. But that is also a choice.
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think it's one of the solutions, or one of the ways through self-esteem. Because I'm sorry, self-esteem, when somebody, how common is that? Somebody in your office coming with self-esteem issues.
Oh my God. Well,
after years of working with clients, I'm like, you know what? Neuroplasticity, choose it or lose it. Be relentless.
Be relentless in changing your patterns, repeating a different message to yourself. So even if, and this is fake it till you make it. So even if tomorrow you listen to the show and tomorrow you're like, okay, I'm supposed to like what I see in the mirror, it actually means that you would be, like, you would call emotional rehearsal, right? That's the terminology.
Yeah.
You'd be saying to yourself, hey, you looking good. Even if you don't actually feel that way, it still will ultimately work. Yeah. A lot of people think that won't work. It will work.
I love that you said that, because when I was a student, and now, like an emo teenager too, I'm like, if somebody would have told me to fake it till you make it, I would have told them to go, where. I would have been like, please give me a break. But I'm realizing now, with this idea of neuroplasticity and this idea of really trying to better myself, you have to be relentless in your therapeutic practice. So yeah, you're going to wake up tomorrow and you're going to be like, this is BS. I don't want to do this crap that Sandra and Anna Maria were talking about yesterday. It doesn't feel good. It's not me. It's totally fake. This is dumb, right?
Oh, yes.
But I want you, I'm urging you, I'm pleading with you, if you're listening and this resonates with you, please be relentless. Like, do it every day for the next 30 days. And, fake it till you make it, because your neurotransmission will change. There are certain neuronal connections that will change, and then it'll become easier and you won't be faking it in the long run, right?
That is so awesome that I think that maybe what we're going to do is we're going to schedule you back in about a month from now. We'll have people work on that for a month and see where people arrived at. And we'll do it like a follow-up to the show, if that's okay with you.
Great.
Now, I can't believe it. We're down to the wire here. So first of all, I want to thank you. And I want to say, I think to me, the last message you said is be relentless is very important. You're on mat leave right now, so I can't say that people could call you and see you right now, but I believe you're coming back to us in January. If someone wants to be a client of yours, what do they do?
Please call the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression at 514-777-4530. Our coordinator will take good care of you, and she'll tell you more about me and how to reach me. And of course, you can always write us at The Sassy Psychologist, www.sassypsychologist.com. Vlogs are coming soon. Different treats are coming soon. So
awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So people can follow you as Sassy Psychologist, and I hope they will, because you have a lot of great articles. They're awesome. So thank you so much for coming on Straight Talk.
Thanks for having me, Sandra.
I'd like to thank everybody for joining us on Straight Talk and invite everybody to come back next week. And a special thank you to our sponsors, Spa Minari, for helping to make this show possible. If you're interested in our retreats, therapy, or any media that was mentioned on this show, check out helpforanxietydepression.com. And if you want to hear any of our previous shows, you go to straighttalksandarish.com. And while you're there, if you put a /radio gifts, you can get a whole bunch of free gifts. You can also follow us on Facebook, Straight Talk Sandra Riche, as well. Feel free to leave a question for Anna Maria, myself, and remember to like our page while you're there. One more thing, you can listen to this show or any prior show as a podcast on the website Straight Talk Sandra Riche, or on your iPhone or iTunes. Did you know that? It's pretty cool on iPhone or iTunes. And don't forget to you can leave a comment or a question at info@helpforanxietydepression.com. My name is Sandra Riche, and I promise I will help you learn to live your best life again next Thursday, same time, same channel. In the meanwhile, this is Straight Talk with Sandra Riche. Keep your eyes on the stars.
Thank you for listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Riche. We hope you've enjoyed today's show, and we'll tune in again next Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. Now, go live your best life.